All right, welcome to the Ohio Association for College Admission Counseling Virtual College Fair. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Just a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions that are happening, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions too. And this presentation is being recorded, and it's going to be available within about a week at strivescan.com/Ohio. But for now, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to our presenters. So without further ado, this is Dan from the Ohio State University.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. And let me get my screen up here. I would like to welcome not only our presenters, but everybody who's joining us for this session. I know it's an evening program and you're probably tired of Zoom meetings, but thank you for joining us for this session, which is called A Lot of Higher Education Options in Ohio. We've got about 45 minutes, so we want to get straight to our task at hand. And we have three presenters who are going to be leading the session today. I'm one of them. My name is Dan Pohl, and I work as an assistant director of admissions at The Ohio State University. And I'm going to turn it over and let Allie and Danny introduce themselves. Allie?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Allie Bradley. I'm an admissions rep at Columbus State Community College in Central Ohio. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hi, everybody. My name is Danny Crown. I work as a campus experience coordinator at Muskingum University. I used to be an admission rep and traveled around to high schools. And now my title really just means that I get to work with you when you come to visit. So thanks for being here with us tonight. All right, I'll kick us off here. So our title of our presentation was, a lot of options in higher education. And what we mean by that is specifically we're kind of focused on in the state of Ohio, but in general, there's a lot of options for you when thinking about your next steps after high school. The one thing we want you to definitely get out of our session is this, that if you are interested in continuing your education after high school, you're going to find a place and a space that works for you. So we're fortunate within our state that we have a lot of options. So regardless of what your high school career has looked like, your preparation, your history, your financial situation, don't let something like that scare you. What maybe your goals are, if you have started to establish those, whatever your personal preferences are, maybe size, location, town that the college is in, or level of degrees offered, you can find a place that fits you. So don't forget that, even though it seems like all these colleges must be competitors, we are all in this to serve students, and we want you to find a home after high school, no matter what that looks like. Just before we kind of dig deeper into our session here, we wanted to just give you all a little bit of a background on what types of colleges and universities, as well as degrees, are offered in our state. So you might be familiar with these or maybe not. So 2-year community colleges and technical schools, those places offer associate degrees as well as certificate programs. So Allie will dive a little bit deeper into what community colleges look like, but that's one option for higher education that you might think about attending. And then we also have 4-year public universities and private colleges. So we'll talk about kind of the differences of those and things like that. But just to start, at these places, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and doctorate degrees are all offered at these four-year universities and colleges. And then I think I'll pass the baton to Allie.
Thank you. Yes, so as she mentioned, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into community colleges. For the state of Ohio, we do have 23 different community colleges. And just a little glimpse about what it means to be at a community college. I like to break down the fact that we have a good balance of preparing students for both the workforce as well as preparing them for their next step to achieve that goal at that four-year institution. So you have some students who might be pursuing an Associate of Arts or Associate of Science, where they're taking some general courses and they're planning to go right on into their four-year institution like the Ohio State University or Muskegon. And then you have some folks who know, hey, I want to go right into the workforce, whether that be that they're wanting to do something in IT, or maybe it's something they want to do like work with manufacturing. So it's a wide variety. And then there are also some medical options that you could get acquainted with. Those are just a few options that you could test out at community college. Along with that, I like to stress that community colleges are notorious for being open access, meaning that we essentially are trying to take away any barriers or hurdles that students may encounter while they are trying to pursue post-secondary education. Meaning that you don't necessarily have to have the uber high 4.6 GPA with 17 different extracurricular activities. Those are great because they're still valuable when it comes to scholarships. However, as far as the competitive aspect, it's not necessarily a big part of your entrance into a community college. Along with that, I like to touch on the fact that we provide associate degrees and certificates. And sometimes I like to dive a little bit deeper with that because I recognize students may not realize what that means for them on their college search. So as far as certificates go, they could come at a number of opportunities, whether it's that you are fresh out of high school and you are like, hey, I gotta get something under my belt to separate me from my peers who have also just graduated from high school. You have some folks who are working towards their associate's degree, but realize they also need the certificate that falls under their degree to make sure they are able to be employed by their respective fields. And then you have some folks who maybe realize down the road after they already earned a credential, or maybe they just realized, hey, I want to switch it up and I had a change of heart in the interests I have as far as career goals, and then they're coming back. Along with that, I'd like to touch on the fact that we have small classroom sizes. For Columbus State, our average classroom size is 19:1 as far as students to faculty. Now it says housing on here, and I want to break that down because housing for community colleges often, not all the time, but often is a little different. Our focus is not to provide you housing in the sense where you're going to live on a dorm per se, but a lot of times in community college environments, we're more so focusing on how to support you in whatever housing needs you may have. So whether that is the roof over your head or it's the things that are going on while there's a roof over your head. So for example, finding resources like how to navigate your electric bill, money management, food opportunities, different things of that assortment. And then last but certainly not least is affordability. For Columbus State specifically, I know that 76% of our students graduate debt-free because most of them qualify for the Pell Grant. However, I also like to point out that even without utilizing the Pell Grant, we still have students who are graduating with little to no debt because of the affordability that community colleges like Columbus State have. Thank you.
All right, a little bit about private colleges and universities. Schools in Ohio might be a university or a college, and they can still be considered private. So sometimes that's a little confusing, just our names. But in Ohio, we do have over 50 private colleges. So there are a lot of options. and as we kind of do the math here, you'll see if we started with, 23 community colleges, now we're at 50 private colleges. So definitely the options are gaining on us. But so you do have a lot of choices. Private colleges are often known for smaller campuses, both physically, when as a physical space, and then also for the number of students. Now that might not be all the time. There are private universities in the United States that have 30,000 students attending. So this is just a generalization, but often smaller campuses with more personal attention from professors. So smaller class sizes, not as many residence halls, perhaps, things like that. So often then we do have a higher sticker price. So usually we compare this to like maybe buying a car. There's always a sticker price on a vehicle, but usually you can walk away with it for a little bit less than what that sticker price said. So private schools, you will see, like, if you all are getting things in the mail, or if you have explored on websites, the tuition and room and board price is often scary. I'm very honest with families in saying nobody wants to pay that much money, but there's also more robust scholarship options and financial aid resources. So because of that, it usually can bring the cost down to what is an affordable option for students, or perhaps comparable to other schools that you might be looking at. So a takeaway that I always encourage high schoolers to think about is just don't write any type of higher education option off because of cost. So as you're kind of going through your search, be open to what you want, and work through the process. Financial aid is something that everybody will kind of work through, and you might see that it's an affordable option. Another thing about private colleges and universities is that there is often a wide range of academic program offerings, including pre-professional programs. So just when you're looking at different schools, don't necessarily write a private school off because you think, well, I bet they don't have neuroscience. They very well might have neuroscience or a specialty program that you're looking at. So if you are on kind of the lookout for a school and you think maybe I want to be in a smaller place, or I really do want to go somewhere with additional attention, or those kind of personal resources, then maybe putting some private schools on your list is something to do. All right, Dan, how about public?
Well, thank you, Danny. I appreciate your turning the mic over to me. I am responsible for talking about the public universities in the state of Ohio, and there are 13 of those. There's not that many, so I'm actually going to tell you who the 13 undergraduate public universities are. They are the University of Akron, Bowling Green State University, Central State University, the University of Cincinnati, Cleveland State University, Kent State University, Miami University, Ohio State University, that's the one I work for in Columbus, go Buckeyes, Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, the Bobcats, Shawnee State University, the University of Toledo, Wright State University, and Youngstown State University. So those are the 13 public universities that offer undergraduate programs in the state of Ohio. There is a pretty wide range there. So I do have to talk a little bit in generalizations about the public universities. First of all, let's talk about the size. Most people, when they think about public universities, think of large universities, and that typically is true. Usually the public universities are larger than the private colleges. Columbus State, though, is a pretty large community college, and it's larger than many of the public universities in the state of Ohio. So the smallest of the ones in Ohio is Central State University, that has 2,033 students or so right now. The largest one in Ohio is the Ohio State University on the Columbus campus that has a little over 60,000 students enrolled there. And there's a huge variety in the middle. It's anywhere between that 8,000 and 22,000 range. There are several universities that have their populations in that range. Another thing that varies considerably is the enrollment criteria. There is a line of continuum that starts with open enrollment, and on the other end is the highly selective or competitive admissions process, and the public universities in Ohio cover a pretty broad gamut of that. I will use Ohio State as an example for one part of this. On the Columbus campus, it is very competitive. We this year had about 63,000 students who applied for our freshman class. We only have room for about 7,800 students in that freshman class. And so it does get very competitive trying to get one of those spots in Columbus. However, we also have 5 regional campuses that are all Ohio State University campuses in other parts of Ohio, and all 5 of our regional campuses are open enrollment, meaning that if you graduate from high school and pass the graduation exams, you can be an Ohio State Buckeye if you are an Ohio resident at any of those 5 regional campuses. That's an open enrollment format. And again, in the 13 public universities, there's a pretty big variety there of general admissions, or they may require a 2.0 GPA or a 2.5 GPA, or an 18 on the ACT or a 22 on the ACT, or some variation of competitiveness that's between open enrollment and highly selective. At public universities, generally there are more degrees offered. Ohio State has over 100 undergraduate degrees. I believe it's University of Akron that lists like 260 undergraduate degrees. There's a lot to choose from at the public universities. We also have a lot of the graduate and professional programs. So medical school, dental school, optometry school, pharmacy school, law school, veterinary school. Ohio State has all of those as well. And that's typical of the larger public universities. One of the more important distinctions for public universities is the cost. And the public universities, the sticker price, as Danny was talking about with the private colleges, is a little bit less, simply because the public universities do receive some funding from the state of Ohio, from the tax money that Ohio taxpayers pay. There's a certain portion of that that comes through the Ohio budget to the public universities that allows us to keep our tuition more affordable. So again, I'll agree with Danielle. Please don't pick a college because of its sticker price, and don't eliminate any colleges because of the sticker price, because the colleges that cost the most are usually the ones that also offer the most in scholarships and financial aid in order to level the playing field a little bit. But because the public universities do receive some public funding, then we are able to keep our sticker price a little bit lower. And the last aspect that I wanted to mention was the regional campuses. Many of the public universities also do have their own regional campuses. Those are smaller campuses, but still teach the same courses that they teach on the main campus. At Ohio State, for example, we have regional campuses in Newark, Mansfield, Marion, Lima, and there's an agricultural campus in Worcester, Ohio. But you can start any of the 200 degrees at Ohio State at a regional campus with the gen ed English and math and history and psychology and those courses. So most of the public universities have at least one regional campus that might be a better option for you as well. Still keeps you in the public university population, maybe closer to home, maybe less expensive even than if you had attended the main campus. I think that's all that I have to talk about right now until we see some questions from students. So Danny, I'm going to turn it back over to you, I believe. Do you want to do a quick poll just to see who our students are that are joining us?
Yeah, we were just curious of our students. Are you a high school senior, a junior, a parent, a sophomore who's really on the ball, or a freshman who's really excited about their search? I know that Allie and Dan have probably worked with some pretty eager underclassmen before, so we're always excited when you guys are happy to have a college search.
And if you are a senior, junior, sophomore, freshman, or parent, we are happy to work with you and hope that we can facilitate, your dreams coming true for college.
Absolutely. And Allie, were you going to run the Q&A?
Yes, I was just gauging to see if anyone had dropped in any of the answers as far as what year they were. So again, good evening, folks. I hope you took some great notes. If not, as our facilitator Annie mentioned, it will be recorded. But this time we want to open the floor up for a little bit to see what questions we can assist you with. And make sure that you walk away from some information that you yourself are directly looking at. With that in mind, feel free to ask specific questions. However, we will do our best to generalize answers to reach as many students as possible. So please drop as many questions as you can think of in the chat and we will go from there.
We are here to answer your questions. Please submit some.
The infamous awkward silence while we wait.
Usually nobody likes to ask the first question, so I'll just ask it so then they can ask the second question. I know a common question or concern is often like, when should I be starting my college search? How do I start my college search? What kind of is the expectation for that? So do you all have advice maybe to our group on like a timeline that they should maybe keep in their back pocket as they move through these next couple of months?
Allie, go ahead and answer that.
Sure. My personal opinion is honestly middle school. If I'm being completely honest, is middle school, because of that helps you kind of get the ball rolling into high school. However, that does not mean, well, wait, I'm in insert whatever grade you're in. That does not mean by any means, hey, well, I completely dropped the ball. By no means, no. That is not the case. But I definitely think that as early as middle school, it's great to start the conversation and figure out your game plan as far as what your interests are. You don't necessarily have to know what major you want to do, but have an idea of what interests you have, as well as who's paying for it, because that makes a difference as far as what colleges you want to visit over your summer break or your winter break, things of that nature. If you know who's paying for it, even though we discussed that there are ways to navigate it at all three levels that we discussed, you still like to have an idea. Okay, well, there's a trust fund out there, or there are different savings options that your family has opened up, or hey, we got to figure this out. You got to make some scholarships. I've had unique conversations with folks who've been told, hey, I have to foot at least half the bill. So then with that, they looked at colleges that they knew, okay, what am I prepared to foot half the bill for? And for some folks, it was, okay, half the tuition. So every year, that first semester, half of it. Some folks, it was alternating semesters. So the parents said, okay, well, you got to pay the first semester. I pay the second, which I thought was genius, because that first semester is typically the most challenging because you're figuring out new things. But really, as early as possible. Long-winded answer, but as early as possible.
That's a great answer though, Ally, and I'm going to agree with you that middle school is when those conversations need to begin and when students need to start thinking about college, because not just the finances, but even the academic portion begins in middle school. For admissions purposes, if you're looking at a competitive college or university, their admission is going to be based on the courses that they've taken all through high school and including middle school if they started with Algebra 1 in the 8th grade or Spanish 1 in the 7th grade. And so students need to make a commitment to those college prep courses that are going to prepare them best to do college level work. And they need to make a commitment to keep their grades up if they want to get into a highly selective or selective school. I would say, on the other hand, the best time for students to really dive into the college admissions process is probably during the junior year of high school. The websites have made it so much easier for students and parents to have access to college information. You could go on any of our websites right now and start reading, and it would take you 5 years just to read everything that's on the website right now. But you can get a lot of good information early about what the programs the school offers, what support systems they have, all about the admissions process. Junior year is a good time to really get involved with that. And also it's a good time because a lot of schools or students are taking ACT or SAT as part of their end of year exams in their junior year. And it doesn't make any difference how many schools you're looking at in your junior year. You could be looking at 10 or 20 or 30, just to throw out a wide net to see what schools offer. The important part though is that by the beginning of your senior year of high school, you want to have that narrowed down considerably to 3 or 4 or maybe 5 at the absolute most schools that you may be applying to. Senior year is going to be busy enough with all of the, not only the higher level courses that you're going to be taking, but it's also, the last homecoming and the last prom and all those other things. You want to spend time with your friends and enjoy your senior year. You will complicate it tremendously if you don't narrow it down to just a handful of schools. If you're still looking at, getting information from 20 different schools, it will just bog down the process for you and make it a lot tougher for you to make those decisions later in the year. Danny, what would you add?
Yeah, you guys are really spot on. I mean, I think time goes so fast, and I'm aging myself, I guess, when I'm saying that, but your high school years really, I know it might not feel like it in the midst of it, but they go so fast. So like on the academic side, especially if you're just not sure what you want to do, thinking about it early is good. Always keep your grades up regardless, just have pride for yourself in those regardless of what your next steps might be. But I definitely support, as a person who works with visitors, by the time you're in your senior year, if you could narrow down to 3 to 5, mostly because as colleges, at least for Muskingum, I can speak on, we communicate with you like we're crazy people, and you do not need to get emails from 14 different universities all begging you to apply and to file the FAFSA and to visit and come to scholarship day, and then you're going to get text messages and phone calls, and it's kind of crazy. So if you can get those narrowed down and maybe get your applications in by November 1st, even if the school doesn't have a deadline, make deadlines for yourself, because we want you all to enjoy those last months of your senior year. And so if we can work with you earlier, the better, and get all of the important questions, especially that your families might have, the earlier we can work through that with you, the better that goes. So staying organized and thinking about what you really want early on so that senior year is as calm as you can make it I say that in the midst of a pandemic, but someday it'll be calm again.
Awesome
I'll ask
answer.
another general question since I don't see any others in the Q&A. And I'll ask Allie, why don't you answer it first? What is it that Columbus State does best for students?
That's a great question, Dan. As far as what Columbus State does best, I would say Columbus State is really good at accommodating students' needs. And I say that in a broad perspective. If you recall on the first slide, I'd mentioned how the example was housing and how we look at things in one perspective as far as, hey, I need a roof over my head, but also, hey, how do I navigate food insecurities and money management? But then you also have things that you maybe aren't anticipating. Maybe it's a veteran who's returning and they have some accommodations, like maybe they are dealing with PTSD. So there's a wide variety. So a lot of times when looking at colleges, sometimes folks will forget to ask questions about their accommodations. They're not sure what bubble they have to fill, if you will. To navigate that accommodation, I think Columbus State really strives to accomplish meeting whatever those needs are.
I will certainly, I'll agree completely with you on that. And I know we do a lot of work with Columbus State as well. One of the things I think that Columbus State has done very well at is preparing their curriculum so that it is very easy for it to transfer the coursework to a public university like Ohio State. I know they've really worked hard to match the curriculum that we have so that those transfer capabilities are easy. Danny, what would you say Muskingum does best?
Oh gosh, I think I think I would say one of the things Muskingum does best is the attention that each student receives. So you are definitely a cared about person walking around our campus. We're able to do that because we have just around 1,300 full-time undergraduate students. So we, between staff and faculty, coaches, your resident assistants, people that are in charge of making sure you're okay, you will feel that. You'll feel that you're getting that attention both in the classroom. So academic success is, of course, the number one thing that all colleges want to make sure. We want you to graduate and have a successful life. So you'll be successful academically because of this attention, but then also emotionally, socially as well. And I think for us, that allows us to give a lot of great experiences for students because you feel safe to be challenged because you know you'll be supported. And that just works because we have a smaller student population. So everybody is kind of in your business in a good way, if you will, I guess.
Yeah, and I think all three of our schools and others in the state of Ohio, our job is to help students to succeed. So, you know, we all want you to graduate. We all want to give you personal attention and really help you through the process so that it works for you. So I would say that what Ohio State does best is provide opportunities for students. You know, we have the resources, we have the programs, we have the people on campus that we can provide opportunities in a lot of different majors, any place in the world, you know, with study abroad options and whatever else, internships, cooperative education programs, research opportunities. We have outstanding facilities. So our students are getting great opportunities to really prepare, you know, wonderfully for whatever career they plan to choose. So, you know, again, it's up to students to find the school that fits them best and that has the best opportunities for where they are and where they want to be in the future. But as we said at the beginning, those are all available in the state of Ohio at many, many different places. And we wish you well, all of you, in trying to find those right opportunities.
I have a question because I don't see any on here. What is your suggestion or tips for folks who are undecided, whether it's undecided as far as their major and or their institution?
Danny, you want to answer that first?
Yeah, so I'll start with an undecided major. We usually refer to that as exploring at Muskingum because we are going to start you in something. So you're going to explore different options. But what my advice, which I'm not sure if there's parents on here or not, usually they don't like when I answer this question, but I'm just going to use Muskingum because that's what I know. You don't have to be decided coming in. So all the pressure that you might be feeling from people in your life trying to ask you, what do you want to major in? Where are you going to go to school? What do you want to do? It's okay to give them an answer because that kind of gets them off your back. But in reality, at a place like Muskingum and many colleges, you don't have to be decided going in. We have just a couple of programs that are very four-year structured. The rest of our, 58 majors, you can still graduate in 4 years, even if you take 2 or 3 semesters, just kind of trying to figure it out. So I think that college, especially your first semester or two, is a great time to kind of dive into some classes that maybe you've never taken before. I know we have a lot of students who come in thinking one particular program, and they might change their mind 2 or 3 or 4 times once they take a specific class. And that is totally fine. That is very common. One thing to watch out for is if you have interest in a selective program within a school. So again, I'm just going to use Muskingum. Our nursing program is one of our selective programs. So you have to meet certain criteria. If you think nursing at all, we're going to encourage you to apply to that program. Many of the other ones, we don't really have a preference. So we want you to figure out what you want to do and how you want to do it. And sometimes that's really hard to know if you've never been on a college campus or taken a class. And we just hope that we can open your eyes to the many opportunities that majors come with. Undecided on an institution is a little bit harder, I think, because it's this question of like, well, do I take a gap year after high school? Do I start somewhere else? If you truly are undecided, this is my very personal opinion, I encourage students to maybe start at a more of a community college level because you can get some of those basic courses in that will, as Dan mentioned, many schools easily transfer over, and you're not sort of potentially wasting a chunk of money to not know where really you are going to be happy at. So I think it's totally a good idea to start at a community college, save up some money, get some courses under your belt, figure out how to be in college. That's a whole thing, and take more time to figure out what institution makes sense. And I think we might potentially see more of that just because visiting campuses hasn't been so easy for the last year. So starting someplace and transferring, there's nothing wrong with that.
And Danny, if I can just add a little bit of perspective on that. I think 20 years ago when people said they were undecided, it was because they were really just kind of clueless about what they wanted. That's not the case from what I've seen over the last couple of decades being in admissions. When students come to us now and say that they're undecided, what I'm finding out is that means that they have so many options that they're interested in that they just don't know where to focus or where the best place is to start. And so we also at Ohio State have an exploration program that allows students to really explore some entry-level courses in a number of different things until they're able to find a focus that they say, this really is something that I'm very interested in. Also gives them a chance to maybe take a class and find out something that they're not as interested in as they thought that they might be. What's really exciting, though, on college campuses is the academic advising that can happen when, an academic advisor who's been in the field for a while and knows what kind of jobs and occupations there are in that field, work with a student and can, help them discover maybe a combination of things that they never thought about, or, explain about a program that is going to be a huge career field 5 years or 10 years from now that doesn't exist today. And that's when students, light bulbs will go off and say, gosh, I didn't know that I could combine those two interests, or I didn't know that I could pursue a career in that. That's when light bulbs go off, and that's the exciting part of academic advising. But certainly students can come in as exploration, then even do freshman year, halfway through the sophomore year in many cases, and still then find a major that they are interested in and finish that in 4 years. For something like engineering or physical therapy, that's probably not going to work as well, because the curriculum for those programs is very structured and very tight. But for a lot of majors, a student could still graduate in 4 years, if they started an exploration program.
I would love to add to that career services. I absolutely love recommending students to some of the assessments that we have because of what Dannon touched on as far as, oh, I didn't know I could combine those attributes. A lot of the assessments actually take the time to point out things that you're like, oh, well, I do enjoy this attribute and I do enjoy that attribute. I didn't know that you could find this job or that job where those two came together. So it's not necessarily the skill sets as far as I want to be a medical engineer, like, hey, I love medicine, I love engineering. It sometimes is the attributes as far as what you're doing. Hey, I like working with computers, and I also like working with whatever attribute it may be. Or maybe it's, hey, I'm a very engaging people person, and I also enjoy teaching. If you get teaching for Columbus State's assessment, it doesn't tell you, hey, you're going to be a teacher. You also might find HR as a suggestion, because when you are connecting with individuals, you might be giving them a workshop to learn different skill sets, so they're being productive in their respective fields. And that's a different perspective of how you're teaching individuals. Along with that, similar to what has already been said, you have some space to explore. When you get in, Columbus State utilizes a pathway program. So we actually, once you say, hey, I'm in this realm, I'm thinking of these things, you may not necessarily be pinned exactly on one particular major, but if you fall in a certain realm, all of those courses will still be applicable, and you can still make progress both on your general courses as well as your program specific courses. So that's something that I really think is beneficial for us. So we'll go ahead and end our question time and pass it on over.
So just before we completely wrap up for our attendees, just some final thoughts. If you haven't already, start doing some homework. Check out websites of schools. Think about how far from home you want to go, how close to home you want to be, things like that. You're on it, attend virtual college fairs and programs offered. There's a lot of that going on these days. So sign up. And don't be afraid to ask those questions. Talk to your school counselor. They know a lot. They work with juniors and seniors every single year. So make sure you utilize those people that care about you as a resource. Definitely visit campuses. So of course, this is going to be for some places after the pandemic. So as you're doing your homework, also jump over to the college's visit website and see what they're doing right now. So Muskingum has been open for visits since the end of May. That's not the case. A lot of places can't do that right now. So just make sure you check out if that's an option. If they're not open for in-person visits, they probably have some kind of virtual option that you can go ahead and do, which is great. Start there, do a virtual option, and then when it's safe, you can attend in person. you're always going to want to schedule your visit ahead of time. So that's when you get online, or if you are comfortable or your parents want to call, you can call, but definitely online is the easiest way to go about it, and make sure you do that typically within a week ahead of time for your visit, and then kind of gather some questions about what is important to you. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. You might really care about what the dining hall is like on your college visit, but the people in your group are never going to ask about that. So do not be afraid to ask questions, especially your student tour guide. They're going to tell you the truth about everything. So do not hesitate to ask them what it's really like to be a student on that particular campus. We've included our visit links below. Every college has a visit link somewhere on their website. So start kind of making your list and figuring out where you might want to visit or gain more information from.
Right. Thank you so much to Dan, Allie, and Danny. I'm just going to go ahead and I want to share one last little slide with everyone. Oops, hopefully that's sharing. But thank you for joining us today. When you close this window, there's going to be a link to a very quick 4-question survey. And we'd appreciate any feedback that you could provide with that survey. Also, this is just one of many sessions that's being hosted, so please be sure to sign up for additional sessions too. And in about a week, you're going to be able to find this session's recording as well as all of the other session recordings at strivescan.com/Ohio. So be sure to check that out too. And once again, thanks to all the presenters and thanks for everyone for joining us.
Bye, everybody. Go Buckeyes.